Most people would agree that fans have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Daemon, in that fans really just love him, and they hate that they can't explain why, though that love for the character may be going away soon. Daemon's worst moment in House of the Dragon is yet to come. House of the Dragon's first season didn't have a more morally gray character than Daemon Targaryen. The Rogue Prince was celebrating the death of his brother's newborn in one scene, and then having us completely awe-inspired as he rushed into the battlefield to claim victory in another. He's had his ups and downs, sure, with the downs being pretty bad, like the whole murdering his wife thing, but so far he's still managing to remain on the fandom's good side. Well, that might change with the second season, because the second season of the show is going to introduce us to something that's just that gruesome and disgusting. And lo and behold, the one behind it was the internet's darling, Daemon Targaryen. If you're aware of the content of the books, then you may already know what I'm talking about. But for those who don't mind a few spoilers from the next season, basically, there's an event that's going to truly showcase the evil side of Daemon Targaryen. You may have even heard of its name before. It's basically the Red Wedding of HOTD. Yes, I'm talking about Blood and Cheese. Blood and Cheese are the nicknames of two killers who break into the Red Keep and make Queen Helena choose which one of her two children she'd like to be killed. The killers then proceed to kill her firstborn when she makes the horrible choice. This entire thing is basically orchestrated by the Rogue Prince, and it serves as the Black's revenge for what happened to Luke.
When I took command of the Watch, you were stray mongrels. Starving and undisciplined. Now, you're a pack of hounds.
Considering it was Aemond who was responsible for Lucerys' death, this was basically their way of making things even. Still though, revenge aside, this is still an incredibly horrible thing to do. Daemon essentially made a mother have to choose between which of her two children she'd like to have killed.
Nobles from every corner of the realm are right now descending upon King's Landing for my brother's tourney. Do you want them mugged, raped, murdered? You mightn't know this unless you left the safety of the Red Keep, but much of King's Landing is seen by the small folk as lawless.
And while the anger that he must be feeling over losing Luke is understandable, this is still an act that's very hard to justify. Because of that, I think most people are going to start disliking him a bit more in the second season. He's already not the nicest person around, and that's a huge understatement. But killing kids is just like going an extra step too far, even in the world of Game of Thrones. It'll be interesting to see just what the internet's reaction to this whole scenario is.
They're waiting for you.
If I had to bet, it's possible that people will still continue to defend him even after this, like they always do, even when he choked Rhaenyra. Fans were calling out the writers of the show when Daemon choked Rhaenyra in the HOTD finale. Fans of Daemon Targaryen were left completely shell-shocked with their ideal Targaryen husband turned out to be an abuser. When the episode came out, many took to social media and even called out the writers because of how they'd portrayed Daemon.
Dreams didn't make us kings. Dragons did.
Apparently, they never imagined that he'd be able to lay a finger on Rhaenyra, despite the fact that the character has had a pretty significant history with violence. After all, he used to find some kind of sadistic pleasure out of mutilating people while at the King's Guard. More importantly, he straight up murdered his first wife in cold blood. But despite there being a lot of evidence to justify his crazy behavior,
the Vale sheep might be willing, even if I'm not. Our sheep are prettier, after all. Or perhaps your brother has at last had his fill of your company.
people thought that the Rogue Prince magically turned a new leaf when he married his niece, the same niece that he'd essentially been grooming for most of his life. Instead of realizing that this is just a part of his character and he's always been this flawed, some fans made the argument that the moment of Daemon choking Rhaenyra was out of character.
That is something we might remedy.
Perhaps it is.
This is a good thing. She knows your secret. And now you know hers.
and in their eyes it ruined the character, which was otherwise quite great. It's pretty obvious that Daemon has always had a bit of an anger issue, though the fandom has been very quick to ignore his rougher edges and only look at the positives. As the series continues to move forward and allows his more chaotic side to come out, it'll become much more apparent just how much evil he's capable of. Plus, there's a great way to put an end to this debate once and for all.
Though time and circumstance have seen us estranged, know that it is not my desire to see you fail in your cause. It is instead my hope that this aid will deliver the victory that has thus far evaded us.
Here's what showrunner Ryan Condal had to say about Daemon choking Rhaenyra. According to Ryan, Daemon's act is something that's a result of him being a wounded man. This isn't some kind of a one-off incident that some fans would like to believe, but rather, it's a systematic issue with his personality. He uses violence as an escape, and in this case, it was Rhaenyra who was unlucky enough to face it. Daemon had already been having a terrible day, to say the least.
The sea snake has taken a grave wound in battle in the Stepstones.
When? You won that 4 years ago.
He learned that his brother had been killed. He also got to know that his wife's rightful position as queen had been usurped at King's Landing. Plus, Daemon then finds out that his entire life, King Viserys never actually trusted him enough to share the A Song of Ice and Fire prophecy with him. Considering the prophecy is shared with your future heirs, it might have hit Daemon that Viserys never considered him an heir. And when all those emotions piled up and mixed together, Daemon released them out in the only way he knows how. You may have guessed it, in the form of physical violence and abuse. Condal stated that that's the reason why he choked Rhaenyra. He was just lashing out and using violence as a way of expressing himself. Daemon is definitely filled with tons of flaws and issues, but they work for the betterment of the story, because Daemon's flaws make him more complex. It's right to call Daemon both a good guy and a bad guy, and that's what makes him such an interesting character to watch. While some fans may just expect him to be the knight in shining armor that's quietly by Rhaenyra's side the entire time, it's obvious the writers have a different plan. House of the Dragon is attempting to portray him as a much more nuanced character, one that has both good and bad qualities. He's not supposed to be the person you idolize or even fawn over, but when push comes to shove, you do know where the rogue prince's allegiances lie, and it's clear that he's fiercely loyal to his family and the Blacks. Seeing a character with this much nuance and depth is far more interesting than just another family-loving generic dad who's willing to do anything for his wife and kids. Daemon was never written to be a character like that in the books, so it only makes sense why the showrunners aren't making him look that way in the TV show. Fans who are quick to call the writers out over small stuff like this should probably wait a bit more and see the story expand before grabbing the pitchforks. Though, I can understand everyone's frustrations. Everyone definitely has had their guard up since Game of Thrones Season 8, but the writers of House of the Dragon have proven that they're capable of delivering something amazing. So consider giving them a chance and letting them work on what they've got, instead of calling each of their choices out and saying that they ruin the character. Anyway, let me know what you think about Daemon's worst moment in House of the Dragon in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next video.